Welcome to the Building Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Don Tarjanskis, and join us as we explore the world of construction. Each episode, we welcome a guest that shares career highlights and career advice, and hopefully inspires the next generation of construction professionals. Welcome to another edition of the Building Your Career podcast. Very excited to have as a guest Ash Halaria, someone that I've been quite looking forward to. I know he works on some awesome projects. And off the back of a recent article that he did, agreed to come on the podcast. So I'm super keen in hearing Ash's story. So I suppose, Ash, we'll start off where we always start off at the beginning. If you could tell us a little bit more about your current job role and also the company that you work for as well.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Don, for having me on your podcast. Really feel privileged to be on this. In terms of my current role, so I am the Associate Director at Symmetries. I've been here best part of 11 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So my role is everything, really. I do a lot of I do a bit of business development. I run a structures team at Symmetries.
Mm-hmm.
I look after the human resources in the sense of doing recruitment. As you rightly know, and just looking at the general business as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very varied role, and I still do calculations. I still do design. I still design. I attend design team meetings, and I love that part of my role at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. So it's very much a case of, even at that kind of very senior and associate director and director level position, you can still get involved with projects.
Yes, very much so. So I lead some few small projects myself. I lead some big projects. So I have a mixture of projects myself, and my team have like a good mixture of projects. So in our team, we've got a £60 million retirement village scheme. We've got a big commercial building that we're working on. We've got a refurbishment of a Grade 2 listed building. We've got a couple of private homes for the rich and famous, and we've got a couple of temporary structures that we're designing on. So I wouldn't say temporary. I said demountable. I always get those words mixed up. So a couple of demountable structures that we're currently working on. So a really good range of work, and that's what kind of keeps me motivated.
Definitely. And for all our listeners, please do check out the website. I'll include a link below. Please do check out the website, because for me as an ex-architect, the work that they do is fantastic, and some really cool designs there as well. So all our listeners, click on the link below. But I suppose if we can turn back the hands of time then and just go right back to the beginning for you, what was it that kind of made you want to pursue a career in the engineering field then? Where did it all begin for you in terms of your passion?
So it really started with, I think, during my A levels. So I started doing a bit of applied maths, and really learn how to use maths and physics in the real world, and that kind of got me really interested. And there was a bit of a turning point, there was unfortunately. We were doing, my parents were getting some refurbishment works done in their shop, and they had a DIY store at the time, and unfortunately the roof caught fire during those works.
Wow.
And as the fire brigade came and tried to put it out, they unfortunately the water poured straight in from 3 stories up where the fire was, and was ripping my parents' shop apart. So I mean, we were trying to, catch all the water with buckets, and it was just pouring down at an incredible rate. There's no way we could have saved it. So I managed to quickly get some pipes together and a cow, and I put it up with the help of my grandfather, and we diverted all the water out and got out the shop. So, and I remember the fireman saying, really impressed with what we did. So, it felt really good to apply a bit of engineering and under so much pressure, but It was felt really good, and that's the first point where I thought, actually, this might be really interesting to start doing something in engineering. And I started to look into it. And the great thing about my course at Warwick University is that the first year is general engineering. So you do absolutely everything. So you do a bit of structures, do a bit of civils, do a bit of mechanical engineering, electrical, and manufacturing.
Hmm.
And then on the second and third years, um, you decide which field you want to go into, and then you can so you get a bit of taste for everything. It's a fantastic course. I definitely recommend that engineering course at Warwick University.
And I think that's what it's all about. And a common theme on this podcast as well is make sure that you're at the earlier stages, make sure you're getting as much exposure as you can to different
Exactly.
fields and different ways of working, because it'll hold you in good stead for the future, such as you've done at university and been given the opportunity. So all our listeners, take the bull by its
Yeah,
horns when it comes to getting exposure to lots of different things at the beginning.
brilliant. Yeah, definitely, definitely. The other thing about the Warwick course is that it had a lot of business studies,
Okay,
which engineering courses don't tend to have. So they taught a lot of the stuff I know about businesses and running a business actually came from Warwick University, and and also being part of other businesses as well.
brilliant. And the one thing that I'm trying to do on this podcast is really promote the different avenues available. So
Mm,
obviously with yourself being interested in mathematics and physics,
mm,
there's a whole world of opportunities out there that are available, particularly, kind of going down the structural engineering route as well, where you can, those underlying passions and interests, you can easily convert that over to the construction industry. I think one of the common misconceptions, which I'm always facing with people maybe in secondary school, is, oh, it's just manual labor. I'm going to be out on site all day, but that really isn't the case. And you're testament to, if there's a skill set that you really like in construction, there's probably going to be a job opportunity that would really you can really hone those skill sets.
very much so. So if I kind of look at a typical day of an engineer at cemeteries, so there's no typical day. First of all, you're going to be working, or typical week or a month. In fact, you the type of work you're working on is constantly changing. Then there's also your day. So you could be going to site, taking notes, coming back, doing some design. You could be attending meetings. So the days are incredibly varied from month to month, depending on what you're working on, what projects, and what deadlines you've got. So the field is incredibly varied. It's rare that an engineer is on site for more than a day in our office. Sometimes there's a big condition survey to do, and sometimes you'll be there on site for 3 days, but that's a rarity, I'd
Mhm.
say.
Okay, brilliant. So, I mean, obviously, you've kind of had a long and successful career in structural engineering and engineering, but if you could kind of give yourself one bit of advice when you first started off, what advice would you give to your younger self?
So definitely get your head around all the technical parts of it. I mean, it's sometimes uh, it isn't as easy to master some of the technical sides and the technical theories.
Hmm.
But as you master them, your job suddenly becomes much more clearer,
Hmm.
and your understanding of structures and how a building's put together, that becomes much more clearer. So putting the hours into understanding the technical sides in all the key construction materials, as well as some of the new techniques that are coming through,
Hmm.
is absolutely key. That combined in with getting some construction experience.
Hmm.
I think our field at the moment isn't promoting construction experience enough.
Hmm.
It's for me, it was the start, it's a real start of my career, was when I got some construction experience and then back into consulting, because
Hmm.
I actually understood how different parts of the building is put together
Yeah.
in real life. It's all well and good sitting in front of the table and trying to design a building and not understand how the construction process works.
Hmm.
But once you've got that experience, the design element becomes a bit becomes more friendlier to undertake,
Yeah.
and your design often are much more buildable because you understand how a building's put together on site.
Yeah, and if that's similar to me. I did 5 years studying architecture altogether, but I did a job as a labourer, part time outside of uni
Mm.
hours, because I was realizing in the classroom it was all just concepts. It was all just technical details on a piece of paper that I didn't really understand how it all went together. So even if it was something as simple, if you're considering the construction industry, even if it's something as simple as getting a job as a labourer on a building site, just to see how everything is actually put together,
Mm.
that is such good value for the future.
Dom, I couldn't agree with you more. During my time on site, I was originally seconded as a setting out engineer,
Okay.
but what my boss taught me was teamwork, and that's
Yes.
what construction is about. It epitomizes teamwork. If someone's sick, you jump in and do their role if that's the
Mhm.
more urgent. If if someone's behind labor, you jump in and do the labor.
Yeah.
And I remember like one of my colleagues being sick, and there was 20 kitchens to load out.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it was okay. How do I communicate this to my labor team? How do I get them motivated? And how do we do this?
Yeah.
And that practical experience on how to motivate people, how to get things done when you are up against it is
Yeah.
invaluable.
Yeah.
Um, and putting your learning new skills very quickly. Um, putting understanding. Like I remember being on site over the weekend, and I had to learn how to supervise some tiling going up. Never done it before. Yes, was it the best? It wasn't, but I quickly learned how to do it, and that's
That's
it's all about that getting an understanding of new skills all throughout.
Are you a job seeker tired of endlessly scrolling through job boards with no success? Has your job search hit a dead end? Well, we're here to tell you there's another way. Here at Quest Personnel, we offer a variety of free resources to help job seekers just like you. Our team of expert recruiters is here to help you through every step of the job search process, from CV writing to interview techniques. But that's not all. We also offer exclusive access to workshops, networking events, and other job roles that you simply won't find anywhere else. So what are you waiting for? Get in touch now on our website, questpersonnel.co.uk. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those. Telling is the hardest thing to do on a construction site,
Mm,
but it is one of them. Just be inquisitive. If an opportunity throws itself at you, the more that you can learn, the better, really.
yeah.
But I just wanted to follow up on a point that you mentioned then, in terms of the learning about the technical side of things. So would you recommend learning about the technical side of things as you're in a firm or a practice, or could you recommend any websites or books to read outside of work hours if you want to expand on your knowledge on the technical side?
So there's some really fantastic books. So your main technical development will definitely be on as you pick up projects and from from everyone in the company you're right in. But there is a fantastic book called Structural Behavior by Chankaria.
Okay.
Really talks you through first principles of design, and I've often referred to that still, and I still refer to that in my career. So,
Brilliant.
a brilliant book. Dom, is that something that you can put a link to so that you can?
I've just marked that clip then
Yeah,
specifically so I can put a link to that book,
brilliant.
most
I'll
definitely.
I'll send you a link for it
Yeah.
on Amazon so you can pass it across.
Yeah, brilliant. That would be great. So I'll put the link in the description as well, and yeah, make sure that people are well aware of where they can go to find that book. But that's excellent advice. I suppose for you then, going down the education route, um, you know, what kind of courses would you recommend if someone is looking to go down the structural engineering route?
Yeah.
Or is there any alternative courses that, if people come from, kind of a different background, that they started off not as a structural engineer but wanted to get into it? Is there any kind of courses or things, that education routes, that you can recommend for people then?
So it's having a engineering degree is a key thing first. One of the key things that most of the people I know um, in our field enter. But there's nothing stopping you from, if you've got another background in the sciences or something, entering the engineering field. Um, I know that we had a aerospace engineer who
Wow.
moved into structural engineering, and they they didn't do any kind of conversion course or anything like that. They started off as a technician
Hmm.
and slowly worked through into the design mode. And they attended, I think one day they had one day off per week to attend a course, and they did the degree. They did a structural engineering degree part time, and
Hmm.
that was really handy for them because they spent 4 days in the engineering office and a day at university. So that mixture worked really well to convert their course. So look, so that's definitely an opportunity that people should consider.
Yep.
And there are a mixture of engineering courses. As I said, like I did one there that was a kind of a general engineering degree, then a focus engineering degree. There's
Hmm.
lots of variation. There's engineering degrees with architecture. There's civil engineering degrees, which is a slightly wider field. Um, and then there's pure structural engineering degrees. So
Hmm.
there's lots of variations of what you could do. Um, Getting some, experience in during summer, getting summer experience during between your years one and two or three is definitely recommended as well. We certainly have someone here, and they've come back to us every year, and they've just taken on kind of like we've taken them on as a 9 month gap year student. So that's worked really well because she's come to us as a student. She's come to us between the different gaps between the different university terms,
Hmm.
and she's now in a 9 month placement with us. She'll do her master's degree, and then she'll come back to us full time. So she has a really good understanding of what an engineering and structural engineering career is like.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I suppose for you, I mean, with structural engineering, it's such an all-round, all-encompassing job role, as you said before. There's
Yeah,
lots of different avenues you can take it down, and lots of different routes you can take. I think the one thing that the degree apprenticeship route is something that a lot of people don't even know exists. Where you say, you're working 4 days a week in the office and one day at university, which a family member of mine is going through at the moment with structural engineering. So that's something that is talked about a lot in this podcast, and something that shouldn't
yeah.
be forgotten about. There
No,
is options available if you still want to have some salary inbound as well as going to university as well.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be a complete gap where you're fending for yourself. So yeah, I think that's a really big point to mention. There is that kind of degree apprenticeship route.
No, we've got a few engineers in the office who've done that, so and it's worked really well because they've got by the time they finish their degree, they've got perhaps 3 or 4 years of experience, which is invaluable.
Yeah, brilliant. Um, and just leading on to the final question, then I suppose with structural engineering, in terms of the attraction to the younger generation, it's not as bad as some industries in construction. But I think in terms of what companies can do to retain young talent, sometimes it can fall short a little bit. So, in your opinion, what can the industry do to kind of retain and more importantly, nurture young talent within the industry there?
So it's one of the things we do at cemeteries is look at what the individual wants to do and what they want to gain out of their career. We have everyone's an individual,
Hmm.
yeah, and so what we believe is that giving them the training that they need on to focus on their interest and then finding projects that they want to apply that. For instance, we have a engineer who's a graduate engineer, and she's really interested in grasshopper.
Hmm.
we have a few of these kind of demountable structures that are very standard systems that we help develop with a client.
Mhm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get her trained up on Grasshopper, and then she's going to work on that demountable structure and work and use Grasshopper to design it. So that is helping that engineer develop a skill that they really wanted to develop. And that's the key, having promoting someone's interests, understanding what their interests are, what drives them, and giving them the platform. And I've always described Symmetries as a platform for someone to develop their career, because we think of it as different. It doesn't matter how old you are or how many years you've got. It's about feeding your experience and your hunger and what you want to do. And so if that is doing business development, we'll help you. We'll help you with that skill and develop that. If it's looking at doing podcasts, then we'll help you to get onto podcasts. If it's learning a niche piece of engineering, and one of the ones that we often find is now sustainability. Some of our younger engineers are really interested in sustainability
Mhm.
and being at the forefront of it. So we've spent a lot of time into research and invested in research and developing things like Ferris wheel.
Mhm.
That is a tool for Revit that matches steel reuse with what the supply chain have. So,
Okay.
and that's been driven a lot by some of our younger engineers. So doing that kind of work and understanding what's driving the individual is the most important part. Then it's also about understanding, trying to make sure that you give them the best kind of a work-life balance, and that, a good mixture of being in the office, being on site, and working from home.
Mhm. That's incredible, incredible, because I think that it can easily be lost in some companies where
Mm.
the individual and personalization of the individual and making sure that you are offering something that's genuinely of interest to them can often get lost. But the fact that that's your kind of ethos within the business is, hats off to you there. That's
Yeah.
pretty incredible. Um, there is just one point. I realized that we talked about this at the beginning,
Mm.
and then you just mentioned it there. For some of our listeners who might not understand that terminology, could you just explain what a demountable structure is?
Oh, right. Yeah. So demountable structures are essentially structures that are put up very quickly and are sometimes systemized in the sense that they have a particular unit. And so the great thing about them is that you can continue to use the elements or use that design itself. For instance, we've done a few kind of entertainment projects, and what happens is we've designed it once, yep, and it's using the client's standard system. So they have a type of a column that they use and a type of beam that they use, and they have loads of these beams and they have loads of these columns. And so we use this to form the structure, and that would be for an event. And the great thing about it, once it's designed, it can be packed up and reused for the next year, or the same elements in the meantime could be used for different events, for different kind of arrangements. That's what we mean by a demountable structure.
That's awesome. And of course, that is heavily sustainable as well.
It is, yeah. And the great thing about it is you keep on reusing these elements over and over again. And the one of the ones that we completed recently, they had been using different rival systems for the last 10 years, and they use the system that we helped this client develop, and it's been brilliant. They've absolutely loved it because it's very presentable. So it looks great. It looks really well engineered. It's very sturdy, um, and again, it gets put together and taken apart very quickly. So they don't have the building in place as long as too much longer than it needed to be there for.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for explaining that to some of our listeners. I always like to, if there's something I think people might not understand, I always like to ask the question.
No.
But Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I think that's one of the most interesting stories we've ever heard about the start of your career and the water coming through from the fires. So thank you very much for sharing that, Ash.
Thank you, Dom, for having me on.
Not a problem. Thanks so much for being a guest. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Building Your Career podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and learning about the different career paths available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so we can reach even more listeners. And if anyone wants any free CV advice or simply wants to know the options available to them, don't hesitate to get in touch.